Hello and welcome to this session in the CEDAW Convention Speaker Series, which is hosted by Equality Bahamas. We are really excited to have you join us again this month, where we are looking at Articles 7 and 8. And we know that all of the articles of the CEDAW Convention are incredibly important, but Articles 7 and 8 are particularly important to us here in the Bahamas, especially about 1 year after the most recent election, September 2021, where we saw 7 women elected to parliament, which was cause for lots of excitement for a lot of people, seeing that number, a higher number than we'd seen in quite a while, though not the highest proportionate amount of women in leadership, but we saw 7 women elected out of 39 seats in parliament, and really sparked a conversation about the need for more women to be participating in frontline politics and what we need to do to get there. So Article 7 is focused on political and public life, and Article 8 is focused on representation. So you can see that these two articles are very much connected in looking at women's participation and representation in the political world and in the public sphere. And we have with us again this month an incredible expert from the CEDAW Committee itself who will be talking to us about these two articles and give us a chance to understand how these articles are being interpreted by the CEDAW Committee, what the state is expected to do, and of course, what we as members of civil society can do to help to move the country forward and move us toward full compliance with CEDAW. That's what we want to see happen, especially in the run-up to the 30th anniversary of the Bahamas ratifying this convention. We'll be celebrating 30 years in October 2023. Let's make it a real reason to celebrate. Let's see some progress. Let's see us move forward before then. Really happy to be working with our very own Bahamian attorney at law and member of the CEDAW Committee, Marian Bethel, to make this series happen. Marian, of course, knows the members of the committee very well that she's been working with for a few years now. So I'm turning over to Marian to introduce our speaker this week.
Thank you. Well, good morning to everybody from the Bahamas. I am so pleased to be here, as usual, in collaboration with Equality Bahamas, Alicia Wallace and Khadijah, and all the members of the Equality Bahamas for collaborating with me to really publicize and bring awareness to the convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. It's been a really successful series so far. We're at Article 7 and 8, and we've done Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it's all good. So I want to just really thank Equality Bahamas for its leadership and its foresight in this collaboration, in really attempting to make the convention well known in the Bahamas, especially in light of our 30th anniversary coming up in 2023 when we ratified CEDAW in 1993. So heartfelt thanks to Equality Bahamas and Alicia. I'd also like to welcome today our very own Minister Pia Glover-Roll, who is the Minister in our Public Service Commission and one of our new cabinet ministers. And so it's really wonderful to have you here. And to any other ministers that I may not see online, welcome to this session. So I'd like to now take up the honor of introducing Nicole Ameline, whom I first met in 2017 when I joined the CEDAW Committee. And we've had a great relationship up to this point and moving forward. When I first met Nicole, she was a strong advocate and remains the strong advocate for women's leadership, women's decision-making on the committee, and is in the process right now of elaborating what we call on the CEDAW Committee a general recommendation on women's leadership under Article 7 and 8 and women's representation in Parliament. And so in about less than 2 years' time, this general recommendation will be available for states, parties, and NGOs as a guidance notes for this area of women's leadership and decision-making. So Nicole Ameline has served as a member of the National Assembly of France for several terms between 1991 and 2017, and she herself has held various ministry posts in the government of France during this time. She was Minister of Sea in 2002 and the Minister of Gender Equality and Parity from 2002 to 2005. So it is very fitting that she is here with us today to talk about women's leadership, because she herself has been a minister in the French Parliament. Nicole has also been an ambassador at large on globalization and social issues, and representative of France at the International Labour Organization from 2005 to 2007. And very importantly, she's been a member of the CEDAW Committee since 2008, and she was also a chair of the committee in 2013 to 2014. So another highlight of Nicole's career on the CEDAW Committee is that she has led on the Sustainable Development Goals for the committee, and she is committed to the empowerment of women in peace and security. So that's another area where women's leadership is really important. Nicole Ameline is a lawyer by training, and as I've said before, she's served several terms in the National Assembly of France. And so I really want to just welcome Nicole to this Equality Bahamas series and just say how delighted I am and how important it is for us to have you here with us, Nicole, to really have the benefit of your experience, both as a parliamentarian and international stateswoman, statesperson, and our own work on the CEDAW Committee. And so I thank you so much for taking time from your home in Normandy, France. So it's afternoon where you are, and welcome to everybody. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marion. You know that I'm very impressed by your talent and your outstanding expertise. And I would like first to share the pride with you to have on board a so extraordinary person as Marion. I'm very impressed by her ethics and expertise. I would like to say good morning to each of you, and to start maybe this brief presentation by posing some contradictions. All over the world, we see women as a leading force for sustainable development, for peace, and in the meantime, they remain the first victims of discriminations, violence, and conflicts. Second contradiction, we note that women's rights are not consolidated enough to withstand crisis. We observe that through lessons learned from COVID crisis, but not only. We are very, very impressed by the current and future challenges: migration, food security, climate change, extremism, conflicts. And facing all these challenges, including the digital transition, for instance, we note that women are not at all associated to the decision-making process. And it's a big issue for us, because it's not only an international obligation and a very important part of the CEDAW Convention through Article 7 and 8, but it's something much more important. It's a systemic approach. It's a vision of sustainable development and also stability of our societies. And today, my view is, of course, planet is stronger with women. But if we consider that women can be totally associated to the building of the world, and of course, it's not the case. And it's very important to note that the capacity, the ability of women to be in a sort of equal footing in the decision process has a first impact on the implementation of the CEDAW Convention. And we consider more and more that if women are not in the this capacity to decide, not only for themselves, but for their country and for the planet, we are totally sure that there is no chance to achieve the SDGs. So our view is today to consider that the equal and inclusive representation of women in public political sphere, but also in the leading positions in private sector, has to move from a cause to a norm. And it's very important to note also that the CEDAW Convention is based on a relevant legislative framework. And of course, the elaboration and the adoption of laws need today, more than ever, to be elaborated by women as well as by men. And it's not only a fundamental obligation, but today for us, it is a strength for the world. It is a strength for humanity. And it's very important to take into account that if we don't progress anymore on this issue, the implementation of the convention that your association, your NGO, is so committed, will be not so strength as we need. So my view and the view of the committee today is to strengthen this part of the convention. It is the part 2, and you are absolutely right. There is the Article 7 on the access to political life and public life, and Article 8 on the representation in international organization, and what we call today the feminist diplomacy. The idea is that all the state parties have to promote as much as they can the role and the place of women in the peace negotiation and recovery in compliance with the resolution 1325, but also in all sorts of fora, conferences, and institutions all over the world. For the time, it's unfortunately not the case. And we have in mind, and you know it perfectly because I know your combat, your fight through referendum or directly to promote some laws and some progress in your own country. And it's true that I hope strongly that women more and more will move from this role to be a witness, to decide, to be actors, and to be more and more leaders, because once again, we need absolutely not only to rebalance equality in the decision process making, but also to make a sort of new step, to give a new impetus in our capacity to change the governance. And it's something new, because if I can resume, I would say, take the power and change it. Because more and more we see that the new challenges impose, call for a new governance. And I think that inclusiveness, and if we take into consideration in a better way the intersectionality, we can create some new stability, some new democracy, and we need it everywhere in the world. So the Articles 7 and 8 are not only in themselves something very important to push women to run for elections, but it can change the world. And of course, we know the barriers the obstacles, and they are very numerous. We know the importance of stereotypes, but also violence. And personally, I consider that there is an interaction between the Articles 7 and 8 and the rest of the Convention. Just an example. If women today have no access to sexual and reproductive rights, if there is no law on violences efficient enough to eradicate precisely violence and discrimination, if there is no progress on familial status, it's clear that women are not keen to run for elections. And sometimes even more, some states have restriction on the capacity of women to run for elections in terms of citizenship, nationality, but also because the corruption or harassment is so important that women abandon, are totally discouraged. And we know that in the majority of states, women are not really encouraged to not only to vote, yes, but not to run for elections. So it's very important to know this interaction between the rights and the access to rights and the capacity to become policymakers. And secondly, we can reverse the factors, because we note also that more women are in capacity to decide, to be in parliaments, in the executive branches. You can be sure that there is a better implementation of the other rights. It's the reason why it is a key issue, a very, very central issue. And personally, I consider that the role of NGOs, as your NGO, is absolutely fundamental, because it's true that for the times, the majority of NGOs all over the world are demanding specific rights, specific measures. But more and more, we have to extend this plaidoyer, this demand, to all the, not only all the women's rights, but also all the different possibilities to solve or to respond to the current challenges that we face nowadays. And we have to develop a new culture of governance, including for the NGOs. Because when I see the capacity that you develop to promote your activities and to promote women's rights, I think that Marion could be a wonderful minister because it's true that this experience, this expertise from the majority of NGOs is a treasure, absolutely, for building a new world. And it's very important because if we stay on this random evolution, if we stay on this very low rate of participation of women in parliaments, the figures are very impressive, because only 26% of parliamentarians are women. Only 5 states have effective gender equality in parliaments. We cannot accept that today, and time has come to go to a change of paradigm and to consider that women have to be in a total equality, a parity by 2030. It means an acceleration of the implementation of these 2 articles. And how can we do that? Of course, everybody knows temporary special measure Article 4 of the Convention, which can be a very good way to accelerate. But we have probably to do more. Personally, I propose to anchor the principle of parity and equality, gender equality in politics in the constitution or fundamental laws. Because if not, the risk is to be very, very dependent of the different elections. And we know, because we observe that today, when I'm speaking about 26%, that it is, sometimes we have regressive pushbacks. Of course, Afghanistan is the worst example, but to create a sort of stability in this regard, I think that we need to really integrate the vision of a new governance based on gender equality in the fundamental legislative framework. And it will be probably one of the proposals that we'll do in this new GR. And secondly, we need innovation. Because when you look today at the different challenges that we are facing, we see that if we take the example of the digital transition, we see that maybe we are at the eve of a new historic structural discrimination against women, because as you noted, women are totally excluded about at the same rate. About 25% of women are today in the governance of the startups. And we note that this situation is very, very negative, because the algorithms which are used to design the new world are totally exclusive, and women are not in this new story. So when I speak about new governance, of course, I integrate, and the CEDAW Committee used to integrate, not especially about this article and very often about the article dedicated to employment, but nevertheless, it's the same challenge. We need to integrate leading positions in private sector, because if we decide that women are totally legitimate, of course, but crucial to ensure a better world, a better governance, better choices, we need really to extend this vision to the private as well as the public and the politics sector. So the new GR that we are going to elaborate will cover very largely all the spheres that I have noted, and including the resolution, of course, 1325, because it's a very good experience to note that even for this so crucial issue, we see that very few women are in fact associated to the recovery and peace negotiations. Women are considered, it's true, as victims, and there is a lot made to try to organize justice complaints and reparation, but it's true that regarding recovery and post-conflict issues, it's not the case. So we have really to integrate all these different issues to be totally efficient and to create something new, because the idea, I spoke about acceleration, I have to speak also about innovation, and mobilization. Innovation, because we need to create something new in terms of governance, in terms of inclusiveness. We had a wonderful GR on indigenous people, and it's true that it's one of the, for me, the most crucial issue to integrate, to give a total legitimacy to the women who have never been associated to the decision. Of course, there is consultative fora, there is a lot of possibilities to express an opinion, but there is really no capacity to be really actors, to be really leaders. And when we are facing climate change as today, it's absolutely important to have in mind that nothing is possible if we are not totally convinced that inclusiveness is the best response. So the next step will be to elaborate a scope covering all the issues, the barriers, formal and informal, the role and the place of NGOs in this new vision of the societies and of the planet, of course, and also how to do with the states to create a new environment, a new capacity, and also a new vision, because I don't want to be just on the constraints. I consider that we need more and more to share this vision. If not, I'm not sure that we'll get a great result in the short term. So the first step will be to put on our website a concept note, and I invite you to react, of course. You'll see that we start from the observation that this GR is related to a very, very long period, which starts with the Mexico Conference in 1975. It was the first time that women's leadership has been on the table. And the paradox is that issue has been consensual from the start. And it's really strange to see that after each conference, reaffirming this crucial issue, we have so few results. So, how can I say that? No, so few satisfaction about that, because there is no reservation from the states on these articles 7 and 8. It's generally something that is very positive, and we feel that the state parties want to do their best, and sometimes they come with good news. They think that they can reach 30%. So, but once again, 30% doesn't mean gender equality, gender parity in politics. And we need really to reach 50%, because it's a sort of acknowledge of the real legitimacy of women to be leaders and to decide. So I count on you, because we will organize with Marion and all the experts a lot of regional consultation, and it will be a very good avenue for a new study also on stereotypes, which of course is our big obstacle also for all the women's rights. But on this specific issue, we will we want to take into consideration the role and the place of NGOs as main actors of this mobilization. And I think that considering the current world, the current context, we need you, and we are totally ready to experiment some new forms of not only training, but because women say that they need training. I'm not sure of that, but it's true that more and more, I would like that NGOs take in consideration all the challenges, general challenges, because I think that we need today the voice, the vision of women, really, to build a better world. So I would like to stop at this time, and of course, I'm very happy to respond to your questions.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's been really helpful to hear your thoughts on coming to gender equality in politics, and in particular in frontline politics. I'm sure that folks who have joined us will have questions or comments or challenges or thoughts that they're struggling with and want your input on. So folks who are joining us in Zoom, please just indicate by raising your hand if you would like to speak. And you can also use the chat if you want to be anonymous in the recording, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to raise. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to indicate that, and Kadisha will be looking out for you. And maybe to give you a little bit of time to think about your questions, I'll go first, Nicole. So I really liked towards the end, you talked about this talk about training, right? This idea that, oh, women need to be trained to become involved in politics, and really just debunking that and saying, is that really what the issue is? Is it that we really need training? How is it that men can just up and decide to become involved in politics, but women, we need to be trained? You know, what is that about? What do we actually need to be able to move forward? Are there particular actions that we should be taking on the ground to create the environment for women to be able to participate more easily in frontline politics?
So first time, I think that women have to be more confident in their own capacity to do anything. And I note that it's not often the case, and it's true that even when they are elected in parliaments, a lot of women feel not so confident. It's a question of self-esteem, and I think that something has to change on this ground. And personally, I don't consider that women need training, but they ask for that. What I think it's that as IPU, the Interparliamentary Union, said, we have, of course, even in parliaments, but of course during the elections, prevent any discrimination, prevent any harassment, prevent any violence, because it exists. And it's true that women have to feel strong enough to resist and to withstand discrimination and violences. But on the mental, on the state of mind, I think that they need to feel comfortable with all the issues, defense and security, climate change, digital transition, and more, I'm waiting for NGOs, this vision, this scope. It's not the case for the time. NGOs are very, very specialized on thematic issues. But we have to move from this situation to a sort of capacity to speak about everything, because once again in parliaments I have seen so many women in a very muteness, you know, or very, very shy on some issues. And I think that it is on this specific points that we need to support women.
The CSW, or the Commission on the Status of Women 65, that was held more in a hybrid format because of COVID-19. The focus for the 65th session was on women's engagement in public life and political leadership. And CARICOM, which is the Caribbean community, put together a preparatory statement, so ahead of CSW 65, where it acknowledged some of the issues that are barriers, really challenges to women participating more fully in public and political life. And in its statement, it says, quote, "We recognize the need to implement international and national commitments and norms, including through temporary special measures, create more enabling environments and institutional systems, eliminate violence against women in public life, and strengthen the voice, agency, participation, and leadership of women who face multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination to reach equality in participation and decision-making in public life," end quote. So I think that this is really an important statement to make. It's really saying that CARICOM states understand that there are particular circumstances that make it difficult for women to be able to participate in the same way that men do. And there are some systemic issues that have to be addressed if we're really serious about reaching gender parity in parliaments, in senates, in cabinets. And one of those things is temporary special measures, but on the other side of that, we have the issue of violence against women and seeing the way that women who are in positions of leadership are treated once they're in those positions. The ways that people talk about them, the smear campaigns that are run, you know, what kinds of actions should we be looking for from our governments when women who are in positions of leadership, whether in the government or in civil society, are really being dragged through the mud? What should our government be doing?
I think that we need a national action plan, because if we want to get results and to have a very good and ambience, if I can say that, because the idea is not to push women in a very negative atmosphere or environment. You have to precisely to adopt a sort of plan in compliance with each article of the convention. Once again, if you consider the article 1, 2, 3, 4 of the convention, we can already integrate strongly this principle in the laws. And as we made it in France, but 20 years ago, and I regret a little bit because we have integrated in the constitution the principle of parity, but the wording was not so good. We use encourage and not ensure. But first, I think that it has to be a political will, and with a formal regulation. And secondly, I think, once again, it has to be a norm. And secondly, I think that we have to eradicate all forms of formal or informal barriers, and of course, including stereotypes. It's not easy. It's the reason why special temporary measures can accelerate the evolution. If not, you can wait for decades. So it's important to accelerate, and also to maybe to use education more systematically. I think that an education to empowerment from primary level to, of course, to the rest of education life would be interesting, because it's true that empowerment and leadership has to be integrated to the education from the very early level. And we have also, and it's what I said at the beginning, to progress on the other rights. Because if women are not in capacity to feel free, to feel empowered, to feel in capacity to choose a job or other things, it's very difficult to feel free to run for elections. So it's a global approach, and I think that it needs an action plan.
Thank you so much for that. And a lot of what you're talking about with the education and helping women and girls to see themselves and each other in this way connects a lot to what we heard from Bandana Rana a couple of months ago in looking at gender stereotypes. So if anyone missed that session, definitely go back and check out that reporting at tiny.cc/CEDAW5 reporting to learn a little bit more about gender stereotypes and how these ideas that we have about gender and about women and girls and who we're supposed to be because of our gender or because of the sex assigned to us really puts us in a box and restricts us in what we are able to access and what we're able to even envision for ourselves. I see we have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to go first to the person who is willing to unmute, which is Minister Glover Roll. Please unmute and go ahead with your question.
Good morning. Congratulations to Equality Bahamas for continuing to have this forum. Thank you, Speaker Nicole. Thank you, Marian, for the invitation. So a lot of what I'm hearing is, we speak about this topic often about how do we get more involvement of women in political leadership. And I say political because, of course, women are involved in all spheres of leadership around the world now, not only in the Bahamas, in public and private sector. But there's still this barrier to political leadership because of, not so much political will, I think, for the Bahamas anymore, not maybe that hard quota, but the fact that there is the issue or the thought of harassment, maybe not physical violence as much in our nation, but I know we have so many counterparts around the world who I have spoken to who actually have to experience physical violence or have experienced. But ours still one of the greatest barriers that I think exists in the Bahamas for political leadership is the lack of confidence. Women are very confident, but when it comes to political leadership, and you think of the barriers in particular, the personal attacks and that women have to withstand, the sacrifices then weighed. Is my passion for nation building, is my passion for service outweighing the fact that I'm now becoming a target, and now by extension, putting my family, my children, my husband, the people who are a part of my village as targets. That is, in talking to women around the world in leadership, that is the greatest barrier. There are others. There's still the traditional attitudes and biases that where a woman's place should be. There's still that. There's still the practical side of things in terms of funding for women in political leadership that may not be equal to what men can attract. But most important for me is I think that the issue of confidence. How do we address that? It comes through support. Women feeling that NGOs, that women's advocacy groups are supportive, that we're not just paying lip service to the support that we say we're going to put behind women to rise to the call of political leadership. That is very critical when I speak from a Bahama-centric place. We can institute as many quotas as we want, but when it comes to women feeling empowered to offer themselves and feeling that they have the support behind them, I don't think we're yet to a place where it matches to the place for men. Yes, we remove these barriers, but then we need to also ensure that we're starting this empowerment process from an early age, and that we're modeling the behavior for those few of us who are now in political leadership, which definitely doesn't match our societal makeup. we have to ensure that we're modeling the behavior of strength. It takes a lot of strength. We're modeling the behavior of when this happens, this is how I'm going to react. We model the behavior of being at the table and saying, this is what is happening to me as a woman. How are we, the full administration or the full arm of government, going to deal with the way me as a woman is treated in political life, ensuring that we hold our governments accountable in the way that women are treated, are respected, that everything that's handled is handled in a balanced way, not the traditional, oh, she took it in the wrong way. Oh, it was just a joke. No, it's not a joke. So that's the political will we need there, but also ensuring in terms of, as we build this future towards 30% not even being ambitious enough, where we're heading to a future of 50 or more, because that's the societal makeup, where women are able to embrace the confidence because they see it being modeled. They're able to say that I can be mentored, I can be empowered by tapping into certain networks. That's what the men have. They have networks, and allowing our talent pool of women that definitely exists to feel the village, to feel the strength behind them. That's what's important. Women supporting women. It's very basic, but it's what we need. It's no question that women are qualified, competent, capable, willing, but not experiencing the level of confidence. I led a government delegation to the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Conference in Halifax in August of this year. The agenda was very gender sensitive, heavy. And there was a lot of conversation of women in parliamentary leadership. And these same points, these same factors are what is resonating around the world. The confidence is in there because we don't necessarily, as women in leadership, feel the support from women. Very small, very significant point. And, times are changing. We're seeing more of the mirroring of the modeling of women in political leadership. And so I think that we're heading there, we're getting there. We aren't going to move swiftly if we don't have an acceleration of women supporting women through all of the amazing advocacy groups that already exist in our nation, and through the empowerment of women and girls through these same organizations.
Thank you so much for those remarks. I think that all of what you said is so very true. I think we have some more questions and comments for Nicole in our chat. Shakira Roll from Nassau, Bahamas Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma. Her question is, are there any other avenues to seek true gender equality outside of constitutional reforms, given that such reforms will require a referendum? So I'm wondering if anyone, Marian, maybe you want to chime in. Do you have any insight into that?
Yes, I think what might be useful, Shakira, is if Nicole could respond to what the Minister Pia Glover-Roll had said, and then I certainly would be happy to respond to Shakira Roll's matter.
Sure.
Merci. Please, Mario.
Yes, no, you go ahead, Nicole. You can...
Okay, thank you. And I totally share the analysis of Minister, because I consider, of course, that solidarity between women is very important, but also with men, because I consider that if we accept the new vision of a governance totally adapted to the new challenges in compliance with SDGs, so a new environment, and if there is a political will, we can try to convince men that sharing the power is for the benefit of humanity. I'm not naive, but in France, nobody is perfect, but we succeeded to create a new vision. It's not easy. At each elections, women are sometimes very uncomfortable, but the fact that we have a quota, and especially for regional as well as local elections, not only for national, has created a new process. And it's true that we have to build a new process, because if not, it remains a systemic difficulty for women to run. And you are absolutely right. Harassment, violence sometimes continue in parliaments. It's the reason why IPU has elaborated a sort of charter or sort of guidelines to ensure women to have also responsibilities in the structures within the parliaments, because it's not enough to be elected if the parliament is male dominated. So there is a lot of actions to adopt and to implement to be sure that all the process is more secured, more safe for women. Because it's true that I can understand that political issues can be something difficult for women, and I cannot imagine that we can stay in this situation. And I want to add that it's the same, of course, in diplomatic positions, but we have really to have a global approach on this issue, and not only on the strict aspect of elections. And for example, the question of conciliation of family life and political life can be a great issue, because women are so busy, so facing difficulties to conciliate everything, that to have a political career can be also another challenge. So at each level, at each step, we have to give a response. And I just conclude on confidence. It's true that political environment has been totally far from the ambition of women all over the world. And it has to change, because once again, to have the capacity to decide for the world is a necessity today for women as well as for men, but in a gender balance. And women has really to how can I say that? In my English is not very good, but I would like to say that it's much more than awareness. It has to be a sort of duty, a sort of strategy. Yeah. And the role of the CEDAW Committee is to not only to encourage, but to give the capacity and the legitimacy to women to go.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Nicole, thank you very much for that response to me, Minister Pia Gloverol's very expansive elaboration of her position in this regard. If you could also speak to this question that Shakira Roll has just put out, that would be very helpful. She's asking if there are any other avenues to seek true gender equality outside of constitutional reforms. As you may be aware, we have some constitutional impediments in the Bahamas in regard to women's equality at that level. And so what Shakira is asking is, are there any other ways to seek gender equality outside of a constitutional reform which requires in our country a referendum?
There are also the possibility to have an agreement with political parties, and if not, a capacity to not only to encourage, but to ask for gender equality within the political parties, because a negotiation with the political parties is probably one of the main avenues. Of course, in my view, it's not enough, but it can be really a sort of very good and productive aspect. We can also, and it's very important, push NGOs, some NGOs to have a sort of une réserve, capacity to have candidates and to train candidates and to push candidates in a sort of massive and global, with massive and global support, because sometimes there is no many candidates, or sometimes women feel very alone when they are candidates. So we can imagine also a way to have a very strong capacity to propose women as candidates. And of course, the political responsibility is to ensure a safe environment and to take really commitments on that, because it's one of probably of the main barriers. So I think that the best way is to act on different sectors, but of course, when it is a formal commitment with law, it's probably the best way to create a new state of mind.
Right.
Nicole, going back to, oh, Marion, did you want to say something?
No, you go, and then I'll go after you. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to temporary special measures, for some reason, this is a very difficult mechanism to talk about. I think partly because people get the idea that it's a favor, and it's giving something that's not deserved to a particular group of people. No matter how we talk about it, just the concept of quotas is just terrifying to people. Although we've seen quotas be implemented within the region, you know, quotas exist in Guyana, and it's worked quite well. They've consistently had 30% or more women in parliament. I think 30% is a pretty low bar at this point. We need to be aiming for 50%. But how do we talk about quotas in particular at the same time that we talk about the quality of leadership that we want? Because one of the things that happens, and I've seen it with some groups, some women's groups, that the focus is on just getting more women in parliament, and we just need to push all the women through. But it doesn't help us if we're not electing women and appointing women who care about human rights and who care about women and who believe in feminist leadership. So how do we balance these things? This idea of getting more of us there in that position, but ensuring that we have the quality of leadership, the feminist leadership of women who are going to push forward policies that are going to support us in terms of social protection in particular.
The sound was not so good. I'm sorry, because I just hear some words, but I think that we have not to oppose quota and leadership. Quota are made to be temporary, normally. I must say that it's not totally true, because in France and in Europe and in a lot of countries, it lasts too much, probably. But I think that it is a necessity to create something new in the mentality I think that women have not to feel less comfortable with quota or not. It's the same. The idea is to create a fair environment and a fair capacity to if not, if we are waiting for the evolution of mentalities, we can be sure that there is no progress. So it's very important to have women elected by quota and to help them to take all responsibilities and not to be immediately specialized on women rights or women issues, because generally it happens very often, and it's not the good way to in my mind to be leaders. You have to consider that all issues are absolutely how can I say open, and for me, for instance, I have decided to be specialized on security, peace, and defense, and it was not obvious because it was 30 years ago, and but I considered that it was necessary to have women in this sort of challenge and issue. But could you repeat your question about social protection? Because I have just heard these two words.
Yes, just thinking about going beyond the numbers, getting the numbers of
Yes.
women in parliament, but actually electing women and perhaps encouraging women to run who care about human rights and the social protection of everyone and are thinking about the people who are in situations of vulnerability. So thinking about women, LGBTQ plus people, people who are experiencing poverty, migrants, because we can get to 50%, but that could be 50% women who the system benefits and who aren't really considering the people who are left behind, right? So how do we get the kind of leadership that we need that will advance and move us toward gender equality?
I think that it's very necessary to have inclusiveness and intersectionality in mind when we nominate candidates, when we define the priority issues, and precisely the role and the place of women in parliaments will lead, in my mind, to this consideration of these particular issues. And we have, of course, to ensure that representation of all women is ensured, and we need to be in a better capacity today to precisely to take everybody on board, because one of the difficulties of our societies is precisely that there is still a lot of vulnerable people excluded, and we need really to precisely the role and the presence of women can be a good response.
Thank you so much for your response, Nicole. I know that we had some other questions in the chat. Khadisha, do you have one of those for us?
I think we might have actually answered them. One was mine, I think you addressed it. And then Shakira Roll had that question that I think Mariam wanted to address.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can reread it if you want me to. Would you like me to read the question for you, Mariam? Oh, you're muted, Mariam. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, okay. Yes, I think that Nicole has answered both those questions in terms of Shakira Roll's question and responding to Minister Glover Roll's question. And I just wanted to follow up on what you've just been talking about, Alicia, in terms of women's representation in Parliament, quotas, the quality of the women's representation in Parliament, because, and I think, Nicole, you have responded to it well, because the ongoing debate really is about women in Parliament and how women in Parliament, whom we've elected, address issues that apparently significantly affect women. So we're talking about issues such as criminalization of marital rape. We're talking about sexual reproductive health issues, the gender wage gap, equality within the family. There's a lot of pressure on women parliamentarians in particular to speak up on these questions, in the Bahamas in any case. And when they don't, we feel that we've been somewhat cheated in terms of their representation in Parliament. And I think, Nicole, you've responded to that in part by saying that, the leadership in Parliament is, representation in Parliament is really important, and that women parliamentarians will come to some extent to maybe perhaps specialize in certain areas and then give the strong representation that is needed. However, even as we speak, there still is a tendency to really want our women parliamentarians to be in the forefront and in the vanguard of advocating for certain kinds of discriminations against women upfront. And as I say, if we don't get that, we feel, so what is the point then of women's representation in Parliament? So I just want to put that out again in a sort of a different way, and to have your response to that as to whether we do a disservice to women in Parliament when we expect them to really be in the forefront of advancing specific issues that affect women on a daily basis.
If I have well understood your question, I think that when you are in Parliament elected, you are in charge of all issues. Women's rights, and I repeat that my conviction is that more women are in Parliament, more the implementation of the CEDAW Convention can be accelerated. There is a direct link, because it's true that it is a priority for more parliamentarians. But in the meantime, my view is that women have not only to be the representative of women. We are in charge of our countries, our planet, and of course, women have also to inspire new policies. And my conviction is that more women inspire new policies, more the world goes better. Because what is good for women is generally very, very good for the whole society. And we have really to, in my view, to integrate the fact that more women are elected, more they push rights in general, if I can say that. And it's very important for women's rights, because I have never seen women not involved on this point, and of course, including for the most vulnerable groups, but not only. And it's very important. I have said that all the challenges that we face today call for the participation of women. Because, and we can also take another example. If we take food security, for instance, women are very, very numerous in agriculture, but without rights, and Marion, you know that perfectly, without rights, without access to land, without access to heritage, to access to credits, to access to training, they cannot be, of course, excellent, and they are not leaders. And more we give new rights, more women, of course, can enjoy these rights. And but if women are not numerous enough in the parliament, this sort of vision is not really implemented, and the sensibility of women is absolutely necessary to integrate systematically a sort of gender mainstreaming, but and to respond to the other challenges. But we see that in many challenges, the gender perspective is really an added value. And the role and the representation of women at this level can be really a change of mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think also to your point, Marian, it's interesting to see the way that the media frames conversations and positions. And I think the way that stories are covered and presented really helps us to put pressure on the women in parliament and in other positions of leadership. So we saw, I think it was about a year ago, that a story ran that was about which women in parliament said that they support the criminalization of marital rape, and was meant to also say which ones didn't and who didn't respond. But why was the focus just on women? Why weren't all of the parliamentarians asked that? Don't we also need to know the positions of the men, especially since there are more men than women in parliament? So I think we also have to have conversations about media portrayal. And that is something that was also addressed in the CARICOM statement preparatory to CSW 65. And I believe it's also addressed in some way in the concluding observations, the CEDAW concluding observations from 2018. So I can pull those up and put them into the chat for people to read as well. We are just about at time, but we have one more question. Nicole, is it okay if we take that question? Do you have another?
Okay, yes, of course.
Okay, so that question is from Jacqueline. Jacqueline, are you able to unmute to ask your question?
Yeah, well, it's a comment rather. Are you hearing me properly? I sometimes get harassed with the sound speaker. Okay, but I just wanted to support the training of women to enter parliament, because that whole area of confidence, not having the confidence that they really need. And to your point, Alicia, of not just, because it's a woman, but women must have that kind of sensitivity. And the training too, and I'm in Trinidad and Tobago, and the network of NGOs has been involved in training women over the years of entering politics, entering leadership. And that has now been taken up by the Caribbean CEDAW. And we encourage that. And, not only the women find need the training, but you find even the men, while they do not come to the training, they seek support from the women's organization that train the women. So, it's really important, and that even if the women get in and they do not have that strong human rights, poverty, and so that they have the support of the women on the outside. So when something arises, they know who they can come to for that kind of support. And of course, to encourage non-partisan and working across the aisles, so to speak.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jacqueline. Really, really interesting and important points about training and what that can look like to be useful.
Yes, and I think that it will be necessary to organize something massive in this regard, because I think that it's very important to push women to be more. They are stronger, but they need to feel stronger. But the resources that we have with NGOs is again a treasure, And we can imagine really a lot of new, and the new generation is wonderful. And I hope strongly that we will be able to create this new wave. And of course, the CEDAW Committee will be very precise on the future recommendations to the state parties to organize this new environment, including media, because it's true that sometimes the question of representation of women in media is really an issue.
Yes. Could I ask one last question, please? Yes, Nicole, I know you're very much active in the Interparliamentary Union, and what I'd like to know, and the Bahamas is not a part of the International Interparliamentary Union, but could you speak very briefly to this institution and how it facilitates women's leadership and decision-making around the world, and how the Bahamas might benefit from being a member of the Interparliamentary Union?
I think that it is one of the best international organizations in terms of precisely women's leadership, because there is about 180 parliaments or something like that, and they work a lot to create a new environment precisely to welcome women, and to organize a sort of modernization of the structures of the parliament to ensure a better atmosphere, ambience in political structures. It's a very important institution. It's one of the most the oldest institution in the world, and they are based in Geneva, and they create a sort of harmonization, a coordination between parliaments on different issues, not only on women's leadership, but also in the capacity of parliament to be involved on different issues, to organize the work, and to be more and more in an interactive position with the population. And it's very important because Parliament are the interface between people and executive branches. And it is a very democratic organization, so they work to make them the more democratic they can, and it's a very, very important organization. For us, it's one of the most support, because we see at each session of the CEDAW Committee that there are efforts to promote women in parliaments, but not only, to implement the CEDAW Convention, and to see how the parliament adopt gender mainstreaming, to adopt, to elaborate laws, but also gender budgeting. And of course, it's important. What you have to know also is that as Interparliamentary Union works on the way to integrate in a better manner the international conventions in the rule of law. And on all these issues, we can say that they are a direct support to the multilateral system and to the international law. And I hope strongly that Bahamas will be a part of this extremely important institution.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Marion, for raising the Interparliamentary Union. I think it's definitely something that we need to look into. I think we have another question or comment from Minister Glover Rule.
Yes, we do. So I would like to bring a quick comment regarding the Interparliamentary Union. I had the privilege of having a meeting with them in August of this year again in Halifax. And the Bahamas is one of the few nations that's not signed on. And I am leading the way, and I have garnered the support of our President of the Senate, Ms. Rochelle Adderley, and our Speaker of the House, Ms. Patricia DeVoe, in support of us advocating for the Bahamas to become a part of the IPU. And so I want you to know that that is on the way. It's something that I think it's necessary. I don't understand why we aren't there yet, but we're going to be there. And I've garnered the support, like I said, of our President of the Senate, our Speaker of the House. I've presented already preliminarily to Cabinet so that we, the Bahamas, can join in and become a part of the IPU. I've been exposed through our meeting and through my research to the benefits. There are colleagues in the region who have also been advocating and giving me advice on the support that IPU gives and the benefit that it would bring for the Bahamas to be on board. So we're working in that regard.
Oh, congratulations. I'm very, very happy with this good news, because you will see the modernization of the procedures of the work of parliaments can be really a very good outcome of this new collaboration. And I'm sure that because they are co-leaders of the new recommendation of the CEDAW Committee on precisely equal and inclusive representation of women in the decision-making process, we will have probably very innovative measures at the end of this work.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that great news, Minister Glover Rule. So we have something to look forward to in the near future. That's very exciting. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us for this session and talking with us about Articles 7 and 8 and really helping us to understand what it means and why it's important in real life, to get a really concrete understanding that's really, really beneficial for us. And before we go, I just wanted to read to you, well, not read verbatim, but just give you an idea of the recommendations that were made by the CEDAW Committee in the concluding observations in 2018 with regard to Articles 7 and 8. So those are: 1, to establish concrete goals and timeframes for strengthening the equal participation of women in public and political life. 2, adopting measures to ensure gender parity within political parties, as well as encouraging women to stand for election at the national and local levels. 3, providing more training and capacity building programs for women. I think we also need them for men. And 4, raising awareness among politicians, the media, as we mentioned, church leaders, and the general public to ensure the full, equal, free, and democratic participation of women in political and public life on an equal basis with men. If you are interested in the rest of the concluding observations, reading it word for word, or reading the entire document, it is available online. You can just search CEDAW Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Concluding Observations 2018. You can go to the OHCHR website and find the document. If you have trouble, get in touch with us and we'll just send the document to you. You can email us at equalitybahamas@gmail.com. Again, this event is one session in a little bit over a year-long series leading up to the 30th anniversary of the Bahamas ratifying CEDAW, which we know as the Bill of Women's Rights. Our next session will be on Saturday, November 26th. We will be looking at Article 9 on nationality. We all know that this is an incredibly important topic for us in the Bahamas. It is related to the 2016 referendum, related to the constitutional referendum that we still need to have in order to address this issue in the Constitution, as well as the legislation that we've been promised to address this issue of women not having an equal right to confer citizenship on their spouses and their children. So please join us for that session. We will be joined by CEDAW Committee member Aruna Narain, November 26th. You can register for it as of now at tiny.cc/CEDAW, that's CEDAW 9. Please go ahead and register now. Join us on November 26th. We look forward to seeing you then. Many thanks to you for joining us. The recording will be up shortly on YouTube. And thank you to Marion Bethel for helping us to organize this series and this session. And thank you again, Nicole, for joining us all the way from France. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.